Hello and a warm welcome to Federal Special Program Capital Beat. Big day for world peace. Trump says that ceasefire could be the golden age of Middle East. As everyone woke up, the only big story flashing across the globe was that there is a temporary ceasefire of 14 days. I'm going to describe the details to you as to what all has happened over the entire night. Now, US President Donald Trump has announced on Tuesday, that is late Tuesday night for India, that he has agreed to suspend military actions against Iran for 2 weeks, citing progress in negotiations and diplomatic interventions by Pakistan. Now, I'm going to put out the tweet which was put out by Donald Trump on Truth Social. And if you can have that tweet ready. Yes, so here it goes. Based on conversations with Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif and Field Marshal Asim Munir of Pakistan, and wherein they requested that I hold off the destructive force being sent tonight to Iran and subject to the Islamic Republic of Iran agreeing to the complete, immediate, and safe opening of the Strait of Hormuz. I agree to suspend the bombing and attack of Iran for a period of 2 weeks. This will be a double sided ceasefire. The reason for doing so is that we have already met and exceeded all military objectives and are very far along with a definitive agreement concerning long term peace with Iran and peace in the Middle East. We received a 10-point proposal from Iran and believe it is a workable basis on which to negotiate. Almost all of the various points of past contention have been agreed to between the United States and Iran, but a 2 week period will allow the agreement to be finalized and consummated. On behalf of the United States of America as president and also representing the countries of the Middle East, it is an honor to have this long term problem close to resolution. Thank you for your attention to this matter, President Donald Trump. So this was the tweet which was put out. It was to a great relief. Markets started responding well. And the prices of the crude oil also started going down. Now, what has Tehran said? Now, let's bring out the statement of Tehran, which was immediately put out after Donald Trump's tweet. If you have that statement ready, what Tehran has said. Can we have that statement? Yes. So here it goes that on behalf of the Islamic Republic of Iran, I express gratitude of appreciation for my dear brothers, Prime Minister of Pakistan, Shehbaz Sharif, and the Field Marshal Asim Munir for their tireless efforts to end the war in the region. And this was put out, this entire statement was put out by Syed Abbas Arakchi, who's the foreign minister. And on behalf of the Supreme National Security Council, he's put out the statement. The statement further reads, in response to the brotherly request of PM Sharif in his tweet and considering the request by the US for negotiations based on its 15-point proposal as well as announcement by POTUS about acceptance of the general framework of Iran's 10-point proposal as a basis for negotiations. I hereby declare on behalf of Iran's Supreme National Security Council, if attacks, now there is a caveat also which he talks about, if attacks against Iran are halted, our powerful armed forces will cease their defensive operations. For a period of 2 weeks, safe passage through the Strait of Hormuz will be possible via coordination with Iran's armed forces and with the consideration of the technical limitations. Syed Abbas Arakchi, that's what he has written. So we'll try and make out as to what this temporary ceasefire means. Is it like a long term solution? Can we expect the escalation again? What must have happened? And not to forget, the very first line of Donald Trump's Truth Social post says that because of Islamabad, means Islamabad has acted as a potential mediator. And the world will be thanking Pakistan for what they've done and to bring to a halt this entire escalation between America, Israel, and Iran. So now let's begin with the discussion. Joining me this morning is Professor Aftab Kamal Pasha, international affairs expert and diplomat. So thank you so much for joining. We have Sanjay Kapoor, veteran journalist and international affairs expert. Thank you so much for joining, Sanjay. And we have K.S. Dakshin Murthy, international affairs expert and consulting editor to the Federal. Thank you, Dakshin, for joining. And I'll begin with Professor Pasha. Professor Pasha, there were indications since yesterday and this 10-point peace proposal, which was put out by Iran. That was also being discussed for last 2 days. But what really happened? Because everyone says that 90 minutes before the deadline was ending, Donald Trump put out this post and declared a ceasefire. So what really must have gone? What must have really happened? And is Pakistan going to get all the credit for what has happened now?
Yeah, thank you, Nilu, for taking up this very historic development. Which has global ramifications, because for the last nearly 40 days, the entire world was reeling under unprecedented crisis. Everybody knew that there will be clashes between Iran and Israel and the United States, but the scale and the impact has been felt all over the world. Not a single country remains unaffected. So it's a big sigh of relief for all the peoples, leaders, countries, peacemakers. I think the world, which was expecting a sort of complete destruction of civilization, as Trump named it, this is going to the edge, brinkmanship, and complete U-turn, 180-degree U-turn. And what we have is the temporary pause in the fighting, which itself is a good beginning, because they want to use this few days of pause to continue the negotiations under Pakistan. And it's interesting that they mentioned Field Marshal Asim Munir, who seems to be the brain behind this entire effort. And to give the civilian facade, Shahbaz Sharif also is mentioned. But what is important is what Iran has said. We knew Trump would put out his point of view that Iran has accepted this and that. But it is very interesting that Iran claims that US has accepted the control, Iran's control of Strait of Hormuz, enrichment right, and removal of all sanctions. This is what the Iranian Supreme National Security Council has mentioned. And US has accepted to stop aggression, pay compensation for damages, withdraw its forces from the region. So which means the core demands of Iran, in principle, Trump has accepted. So there is hope from the Iranian side. They've gone an extra mile despite all the battering they have suffered at the hands of Israel and the United States for the last 40 days. But the big puzzle is this is an arrangement between Iran and the United States. But nothing is mentioned of Israel, which is the key actor which pushed Trump to undertake this dubious exercise, which has alienated Trump from within his own MAGA and Republican Party, his allies, and worldwide condemnation, the language which he has used, the threatening posture, so on and so forth. So the big question mark is whether Israel also has agreed, because they have been repeatedly mentioning that they have specific targets to be achieved during this campaign. So in that way, I hope Trump would prevail on Netanyahu to cease fire, not only with Iran, but also with Hezbollah or Houthis, which they were threatening to attack. So I hope this is not just a bilateral arrangement, and whereby, like Israel has agreed for ceasefire with Hamas and Lebanon, it continues to massacre people and invade and occupy neighboring lands also. So I hope this will encompass the region also, and that Iran would also not attack the Gulf countries. So it is a good beginning, and I hope both will show statesmanship. And I think Abbas Karachi, who was in Hungary, and Hungary seemed to have played because they have been holding the card against the other members in the EU on the sanctions against Russia. And, it has assumed an important role as a mediator between the West and the East. So in this conflict also, without Putin's signal, he could not have gone thus far. So it enjoys the confidence of both America and Russia. And perhaps once and Abbas Arachi were able to cut the deal. Thank you.
Right. All right, Sanjay, I'll come to you. Iran is calling this as its great victory. And also, what happens? I mean, whatever the 10-point peace plan they had given, but what happens to their demand on seeking compensation? Now, has America agreed for the compensation for all the losses, the destruction, the death which has happened? What about that? And is that being addressed? Have you heard anything from the sources what they are saying on the compensation? Because there have to be certain terms and conditions to which assumingly America has also agreed and Iran has agreed for but the kind of death and destruction which has taken place, what happens to that compensation?
Thank you, Nilu, for getting me to speak on this important issue. As Pasha Saab has said, this is a very, very interesting two-week break that is they are saying, but it's more than that. It's actually an agreement that has been signed between the two powers. But when they talk about reparation and they talk about all kinds of things that they will promise to each other, and I think this is going to make Israel largely irrelevant in a certain way if this agreement goes through, because what I also hear is that about 11 or 12 aircrafts filled with Israeli diplomats have left, not diplomats, but some people are saying Netanyahu has left the country or something like that. But there's been some major departure of people of some eminence in Israel who have gone away. So if you look at it, this is a moment of reckoning for Iran. And if they play their cards right, if they do it right, they have the backing of China and Russia in here. China has played a very major role in putting it together, giving guarantees to both China, both Mr. Trump, who's likely to visit China in the coming weeks, and also Russia for that matter.
You are saying that
So with
China
that
has
kind of
played a you are saying that China has played a major role, but look at the post which is put out by Donald Trump, and in the very first line he acknowledges Pakistan's role. That thanks to Asim Munir and Shahbaz Sharif.
Asif Munir and Shahbaz Sharif have played a major role, but if you look at the texts which are flowing around, you would find that much of what Mr. Munir and Mr. Shahbaz Sharif was saying, they've been dictated by the Americans. The
Right.
language, everything else was coming from the Americans. They were basically a facade which had been used. But having said that, I think Shahbaz Sharif and Asim Munir on the winning side. I was reading an article this morning about how MBS had only one phone number to call if the matter would have gone beyond 8 p.m. in the night Eastern time, and that was Asim Munir's number. And he has been making frequent trips to Riyadh and meeting MBS and trying to figure out how best he can secure Aramco and Sabic and other companies that are at his disposal. So that is a very significant victory for Pakistan if you look at it. They have not only have an access to weapons, they also have taste of how a war has to be fought by defending the Saudi Arabia. So I think it'd be a setback for India in some ways, because the kind of space that Pakistan has got, both in terms of peacemaking as well as in also being used by Saudi Arabia to defend their borders and defend their assets, means a lot to them, because they also have access to that kind of technology which was not there earlier. It was only China that was providing them, but now they also have the benefit of US backing them. And with Mr. Trump really praising Mr. General Asim Munir and Shahbaz Sharif to the skies, it's a moment of some kind of disturbance for India, how to deal with such a situation.
Right, Dakshin, I'll come to you now. What can we expect any sort of an escalation now? Because it's a temporary ceasefire to which Iran didn't agree earlier. They always kept on insisting that they want a long term solution. Now, this 14 days reprieve, if I may call it, So what does it mean, and will Iran agree? They've categorically said, Sayyid Abbas Araghchi has said that okay, we'll open the Strait of Hormuz for 14 days till the time this entire deal is not consummated. What does that mean? And can there be a further escalation? How is Israel going to react to this ceasefire? I'm sure this was not something which was acceptable to them at this point of time.
Clearly, though the war has been going on for the last 38 days, there was, Trump has been giving indications of ending the war, saying it's just a few more days, we're going to end it and all that, while at the same time escalating the war. As far as Iran is concerned, they have been very clear that they cannot compromise on some of their very, very basic programs, which impinges on their own sovereignty, like giving up on their nuclear program or diluting their ballistic missile program. So eventually, it turned into a kind of a stalemate where both wanted to end the conflict. At the same time, both were forced to continue because there was no giving in that was happening. So this 14-day ceasefire, so it reached a point where Trump, made this huge, controversial kind of a threat, which is going to reverberate for a very long time. Trying to saying that he's going to wipe out the entire civilization. So it's a, but then the point with Trump is Trump being so unpredictable, nobody could take any chances, and Iran as well. I think eventually took his threat seriously, and then you also had this mediation that was going on all the time with Pakistan, Saudi Arabia, Egypt, and Turkey. They played this role of mediating, and they were constantly engaged in it. So eventually, I think wiser counsel prevailed over Trump, and also his one-point program over the last few days was that Iran should free up the Strait of Hormuz, which now it has done. So there could be certain issues like toll and all that, but fundamentally, Iran has opened up the Strait of Hormuz. So to that extent, I think Trump used that, as a kind of a face saver, and then decided to go in for this ceasefire, because really nobody wants this war to continue, both the US and Iran. And like I said, they were just waiting for an opportunity to kind of break the ice. Now, whether it will continue, whether the ceasefire will progress and it will become a lasting peace is very crucial. And it's going to be tricky. It's going to be tricky because during the negotiations, these issues of compensation for Iran, and Iran saying that it has the legitimate right to continue with its nuclear program, and all the damages. So has to be paid for, compensated. Plus, it wants permanent peace. So all these kind of conditions are there. And as far as the US is concerned, Trump has been very clear that Iran should not have a nuclear program. So these are sticking points which are going to be very, very tough. And you have Israel in the picture. Israel does not want any kind of a peace. So far, it has not indicated
Right.
any support for peace. And Iran, and Israel would like to continue this. So
But
Israel,
Dakshin,
in fact,
what is
has,
currently
yeah.
Dakshin? But what if Israel continues to provoke Iran? What happens then? Because we do not know as of now that this peace plan is acceptable to Israel or not, much to their discomfort. But what if it tries to provoke Iran? Because I'm just reading a statement where, and this is reported widely again, Iran has made it clear that ceasefire does not imply the end of the war, and its hands remain upon the trigger in case the enemy, US or Israel, act in any way. Now, US, of course, is quite visible that they want a ceasefire. But what about Israel? What if Israel continues to provoke Iran? What does Iran do then?
Israel is really going to be important in that sense, because Israel does not want this kind of a peace, because the kind of amongst the demands of Iran is that sanctions have to be lifted on Iran. So this is something that Israel will not really like. So Israel is going to continue to instigate the US. In fact, the talk is that the earlier two negotiations that were going on, both were sabotaged by Israel. So in that sense, Israel is going to be a key player. But at the end of the day, if the US is very clear that the war has to end, and if Trump says that no more fighting, Israel has no option but to go with what Trump says. We have seen that in the past. Israel has obliged and obeyed Trump. So eventually, it depends on the negotiation and how that goes, how that unfolds over the next 2 weeks. And if that goes to some level of satisfaction for both the US and Iran, it should work, even despite Israel.
Absolutely. Professor Pasha, I'll come to you now. Tehran already has confirmed that negotiation talks will be held in Islamabad on Friday, that is 10th of April, and it will last 2 weeks, subject to extension based on the agreement of both parties. Now, what does it mean for Pakistan's diplomacy vis-a-vis the India's diplomacy? Now, India has been seen. What we have seen is Prime Minister Modi dialing phones to various countries, also saying that we believe in dialogue and diplomacy, but eventually it is Pakistan stature, visibly has risen. It emerges as one of the potential mediators. What does it mean for Pakistan's diplomacy vis-a-vis India?
Yeah, this is a very important issue which has direct bearing on our own foreign policy and how we have been conducting our foreign policy. Just to carry forward what Sanjay Kapoor was saying, you see, the Pakistanis have bought from all of this. My bottom line is they have bought security for themselves because they felt insecure from India after the Operation Sindoor. Because of our statement that it is just a pause and it remains open-ended if Pakistan tries to create any cross-border attacks. This is one, and the Americans are on their side probably on this. The second one is the proximity between India and Israel had alarmed them because Israeli sources were mentioning that Pakistan and Turkey remain a mortal danger to Israel's national security. So the Pakistanis suspected some behind-the-scene collaboration between India and Israel to knock out their nuclear capability. So now, with the non-recognition of Israel and non-adherence to whatever Americans wanted through Abraham Accord, they have bought some sort of assurance from the United States that Israel will keep off from attacking them, and also taking Saudis and Turks into confidence, plus the Chinese and probably the Russians. So it's a very deft handling by the Pakistanis diplomatically and through dialogue and discussion. They have maneuvered themselves into such a position where they have confidence of China. And in fact, as you said, Chinese have played a very vital role behind the scene because they were really afraid that if Iran is decimated, their major source of oil will also evaporate. So in that way, it was in their larger national security to prevent any large-scale destruction in Iran as far as their oil access is concerned. So in that way, the Pakistanis have the confidence of the Chinese, the Saudis, the Americans, the Turks, and perhaps Russia and other countries. So in that way, you see, India is virtually sidelined. I don't think we matter in this kind of global diplomatic maneuvering.
That's so unfortunate. Professor Pasha, if you're saying that India has completely been sidelined, isn't that something which is most unfortunate? And obviously, nobody in India would have expected that India will lose its voice at such a crucial juncture.
Yes, we have been doing it ourselves. We have isolated ourselves. If you see the Operation Sindoor, except Israel, nobody supported us. So this one-man show here, and without taking Parliament into consideration and zigzagging sometimes with Donald friend or with the Russians, and everybody is now suspecting India. BRICS, China, Russia, America. We have landed ourselves in this soup where nobody wants to express confidence. Although we had a pivotal role to play. If we had played our cards well, we could have been much more than what Pakistan is doing, because we had excellent relations with all of them. But unfortunately, the Pakistanis have stolen the limelight, and I don't think in future also we have any hope of retrieving our lost ground, and Pakistan would continue to enjoy the backing of not only Iran but also America and Russia and China and the Gulf countries. Even the UAE Express is showing gratefulness to the Pakistanis, whom they were lambasting and then praising Modi earlier. So in that way, even the enemies of Pakistan, they are now having a sigh of relief. So in that way, I think you see the big question is uh, how does Pakistan manage the 2 week period they have because the imponderables are too many. If the Americans agree to the compensation, eventual toll or Strait of Hormuz and complete cessation, as Dakshin Murthy pointed out, Israel is a spoiler here. So they would either try to sabotage directly as much as they can, or through Mossad in league with CIA, internal rebellion, and
Pasha,
you
I just
know,
had one. I had one doubt in my mind, and if you could clarify, Iranian Parliament had already passed a legislation regarding converting the Strait of Hormuz into a toll gate. Now, what happens to that if a legislation has been passed by Iranian Parliament? So this peace negotiation, which will carry forward for the next 14 days, which we are assuming will be done at the behest of Islamabad, are they going to incorporate this point as well, that Strait of Hormuz will be a toll gate? So they have to consider this point as well.
yeah, I mean, the Iranian acceptance of the pause, they have mentioned it very clearly that Strait of Hormuz would remain under control. That 12-mile zone is non-negotiable now. They will
Yes.
say Strait of Hormuz open. You use the Omani territorial waters, but we have effective control. If you want to use the deep sea 12-mile zone or within that 3-mile corridor, you have to pay. It is our national territory boundary. So in that way, it is open. Even the other part near the Hormuz Island, that is open, but tankers would like to avoid that because they will run aground and there will be collusion. So the only safe journey now is the Iranian declared sovereign territorial waters, which is a three and a half
Right.
mile, which has been used for ages by all the large ships. So in that way, I think Iran has made it very clear that in the
Right.
foreseeable future, this is non-negotiable, and America seems to agree on this.
Right. So I'm sure this is going to be
Yeah.
one of the biggest achievements for Iran. Sanjay, I'll come to you. And apparently, the rebuilding of Iran will also happen through this toll or the fee which they will charge. We do not know what the proposal will take the final shape as. But coming back to the Indian diplomacy, the failure of Indian diplomacy, and what Pakistan seems to have achieved through this peace negotiation. Obviously, it's a respite for everyone across the globe, and today everyone must have woken up with a sigh of relief that okay, the crisis is over. Is it time now for India also to thank Pakistan? Will they do that?
I don't know what they will do with Pakistan because till yesterday, Rajnath Singh was saying they'll cut Pakistan into 100 pieces or it'll be destroyed, whatever. I mean, that kind of nonsense they keep on talking about. But they don't recognize the fact that Pakistan has gone far ahead and they don't have a strategy. The problem is that India lost a chance. India was the head of BRICS at the moment, and as head of the BRICS, which had Iran also a member, and Russia and China and everybody else, they could have made some initiative. But we don't. We are so tongue tied on such matters. We don't want to antagonize what is called the I2U2 country, Israel and US and UAE, that we continue to remain in that mire of our own making. So it becomes very difficult to for India to do very much because they don't have the vocabulary to make those adjustments. They have criticized non-aligned movement. They've criticized everything causes. They've called mediation at Dalali something that they would call things that which are just unmentionable here. But the fact of the matter is that India has to figure out what kind of vision it has in terms of its foreign policy because Mr. Modi spent billions of dollars traveling all over the world trying to show that he's the man who knows more than anybody else and he should be the one who should be taken seriously. But now there is a problem in the neighborhood. and he has to figure out how to challenge, because everything, his foreign policy revolved around Pakistan, and the Pakistan has stolen a march. So he has to figure out what to do about it.
Absolutely. In fact, a lot of tweets have already started floating on the social media, somewhat on the lines of that due to Modi's failed diplomatic policies, Pakistan is on the center stage. Pakistan's praised by Trump for its successful mediator role in US-Iran ceasefire from 10th of April. Islamabad hosting talks between US and Iran, and Modi fails India. Modi should resign. So all those things have already begun. Sachin, to you for the concluding comments, what would you like to say to the entire situation now, which is evolving, and what we can expect in the next 14 days till the time the entire peace deal is not finalized?
Well, the first thing is it's very obvious. There's a huge relief for everyone because today seemed to be the doomsday. I mean, yes, last evening it seemed
Yes.
that the world was on the edge. So from that point of view, clearly it's a relief. Now the next important thing is over the 14 days, how these negotiations will carry on, whether the US will stick to its stance and not, again start attacking, because Iran is completely skeptical about how US is going to be over the next, the way they have sabotaged or broken up earlier negotiations. And Israel, it's now up to the US to control Israel and then make sure that Israel also toes the line. Because Lebanon seems to be an issue, and Israel is said that it's going to continue to attack Lebanon, and it's not part of the ceasefire deal, which is not a good sign. So the US needs to really bring its ally into the picture, and of course, I would say the biggest challenge now is for Pakistan. Now Pakistan has done so much, and it's got all these praises from everyone. But now the bigger responsibility is how it's going to carry forward this negotiation. Because if
Absolutely.
things don't work out, it's going to again backfire on Pakistan. So I think the stakes are really high right now. And then for the world, of course. And then I think fundamentally there's a very good chance that this war will probably end. Because, like I said earlier, nobody wants this war, including the US and, of course, Iran.
Absolutely, absolutely. So, from that point of view, it's a big, big morning. Everybody is breathing a sigh of relief. At least the crisis seemingly is getting over. But there are a lot of corrective steps now. Apparently, India would have to think how to frame its foreign policy the way Pakistan has come to the center stage. So, we'll keep a close eye on what's happening over the next 14 days as far as these peace negotiations are concerned. We'll end it here. Thank you so much, Professor Pasha, Sanjay Kapoor, Bachchan. Thank you very much for joining. Thank you.